hello, Professor Hanke. It's a pleasure.
Pleasure to be with you again.
Okay, let's start directly with the questions. Did transatlantic trade and investment partnership face its political debt after German Vice Chancellor Sigmar Gabriel said last week that negotiations with the United States have de facto failed, even though nobody is really admitting it?
Well, the statement from Germany was certainly a signal, but there are really three possibilities and ways to interpret that. One is that it is a true signal, and that is that the partnership negotiations are dead. The second possibility is that it's just a negotiating tactic that will put a lot more pressure on the Americans to close the deal. The third possibility is that it's another kind of signal, and that is that the deal is not done, but it's in a coma. And I think that's really where I am. I think the thing is not dead, but not much is happening. And the reason for that is that the UK Brexit move to leave the EU has complicated the situation immensely and put a lot more uncertainty into the picture, because when Britain leaves the EU, the US can negotiate bilaterally with the UK and cut a more interesting free trade agreement and start working more closely with the World Trade Organization. So I think the Brexit move has complicated the picture, and that's why it's kind of in a coma.
Mm-hmm. Professor Hanke, what is your opinion about TTIP positive and negative economic effects?
Well, the first thing is it's quite uncertain, actually, what all the effects are going to be, because it's a very complicated agreement, assuming they came to an agreement on what they're talking about, negotiating about. And that's part of the problem. The public has no idea what's going on. This is the bureaucrats in Washington and Brussels that are negotiating this thing. It's hundreds of pages long, and so we don't really know the positive side. The negative side is fairly clear from the U.S. point of view. The U.S., for example, has been rigid about protecting the right for government procurement in the United States to be dominated and exclusively made in the USA. Okay, so that limits competition and is bad. The other thing is the airline restrictions on competition that the U.S. is not negotiating, so that's bad from the U.S. certainly the U.S. customer point of view. And the other thing, there's something called the Jones Act in the United States that says if you go from one port in the United States in a ship, like San Francisco to New York, that cargo has to go on a U.S. flagged ship with, of course, U.S. unions involved. And the U.S. has been, they're not negotiating that. They're not repealing the Jones Act. So looking at it even from the U.S. point of view, which I understand more than I do the European point of view, the U.S. has all kinds of restrictions on competition that they're leaving in the proposed agreement right now. So this is, to say this is a free trade agreement, it's kind of a misnomer. It really isn't. There's still a lot of restrictions involved. I hope that really what happens is that the U.S. ultimately negotiates with Britain. They do something that's more free trade, and the thing, all these negotiations start going through the World Trade Organization. That probably would be less messy and would focus on increasing trade and increasing competition. That's what we want. We want more free trade, more competition.
Concise and instructive as usual, Professor Hanke. Thank you
very
so
much.
much, Professor.
Thank you.
Professor Hanke.